Youth Splash, Presbyterian Church in Cameroon, the cover page. There you have the church's logo and the logo of the department. It's always like that. The church's logo is on the left-hand side, and the logo of the movement is always on the right hand. That's the policy of the church. Whenever a local group has a logo, it's on the right hand, while the church is. Now, if you were to write a paper without the logo, the two logos, without their own logo, you always put it by the side, not in the middle. The logo of the church is always by the side. Presbyterian Church in Cameroon. Youth Work Department, Christian Youth Fellowship, Magazine of the Presbyterian Youth in Cameroon, Volume 63, January 1, 2022. CYF Youth Splash, theme, you have heard that it was said. All say, you have heard that it was said.
You have heard that it was said.
From Matthew 5:27, we'll come to it. The behind part, you have the splash, the symbol of the splash. It is believed that the CYF is like a drop of water in an ocean with ripples. This is what you call it. What you see here are ripples. When a CYF member comes somewhere, his presence or her presence has a ripple effect, a rippling effect. That's why you see this. In some other version, like when you look at your blue uniform, it's actually a drop. Then you see ripples. So it is believed that the CYF member has impact. Wherever a CYF member finds his or herself, his impact or her impact has a rippling effect. That's why you see this. I do not know this color. How do they call this type of color? Beach color. This is peach. Okay, take note that it's peach. What is the meaning of peach? It's the name of a color. So the book this year has a peach color. Peach. So how do they spell it? Who knows how to spell it? Let them check the spelling. P-E-A-C-H. So the book has what? A peach color. That's good. Thank you. We are going now to the fly leaf. This is the fly leaf. The first page is usually called the fly leaf. Let's go to the fly leaf. And the fly leaf has almost the same information. The only thing that they have added there is Editor-in-Chief, Reverend Nebamwango, National Youth Secretary, Editorial Board, the 3 regional youth secretaries, Reverend Shea Vitalis Ndi of Northwest, Reverend Winifred Manji of East Mongo, and Reverend Ewunso Stephen Mpanga. Mpanga should be an N. That should be. No, leave it like that, don't change it. That of Southwest. Read, keep fit, and splash the message. Have you seen it? Read, keep fit, and then splash the message. When you drop, let the ripples. Good character is better than 1,000 words spoken. That is the catchy phrase on the fly leaf. The next is the table of content. Let's keep the table of content. We'll come back to it. And the next is the acknowledgement. In the acknowledgement, he says, paragraph 2, last year, our study theme was trust in God only, from the prophecy of Daniel. That's what it says in the acknowledgement. And he has stated the context of the study book or the period. And the 2 things that are noticeable in the context are COVID-19, paragraph 3, and what he calls the senseless war. He described it as a senseless war in the Northwest and Southwest region. Why do you think he calls it senseless? The separatists are fighting to get their independence. Is that senseless? The military is fighting to keep regional integrity. Is that senseless? So why does he use the word senseless? Who can imagine? Yes? Sit down, you don't need to stand.
I mean that they don't think. Like, they don't have knowledge.
These people have thought very well, and they know that if they fight, they will get independence. They don't think. Government says that if they use the military to crush the opposition, they will maintain the territorial integrity. You call it senseless? Brother, your hand was off. What? That's good. That's good. That's good. That's good. That's what he's saying. You got the point. That irrespective of their different arguments, this war could have been avoided. That's what he's saying. So you got it very correct. So the context has two things. Context is the environment, the social, political environment in which the book is written or the study is taking place. The study is taking place within the context of the COVID-19, which continues to show its ugly face. Of course, presently in China, there's lockdown in China, so the COVID-19 is not gone. Then he calls it the senseless war. I think perhaps we could add the war in Ukraine. The war in Ukraine is a context that affects us, because I hear that the increase in flour is because of the insufficient wheat from Ukraine. Therefore, even in Cameroon, we are paying the price of the Ukrainian war. Also, the war in Ukraine has caused scarcity of gas in Europe. Therefore, it's affecting the whole cost of energy is affecting us. I know when the cost of energy increases, energy is one of the resources in production, in industrial production. So, I think by the time I was writing this, the Ukrainian war, so you can add the third context, the war in Ukraine. But in spite of all this book has been produced. The CYF moved, the activities of the youth department have gone hard. They keep on going. That is, so he goes further to thank some people who have helped the production of this book. One, he says, permit me to thank all of you, paragraph 4, page 4, who remain prayerful and supportive to the department, especially for our suffering brothers and sisters who are living the Anglophone crisis on a daily basis. To you, our presbytery, zonal and group leaders, at home and abroad, we say we can never thank you enough for all the work you are doing. Permit me add another feather to our brothers and sisters abroad, especially in the USA, for not forgetting South Africa, and not forgetting South Africa, Europe. He says, keep on. So if you think that the work you are doing has gone unnoticed, no, it has not gone unnoticed. The National Youth Secretary acknowledges this. This year we are concluding our studies on loyalty. We have chosen our study text, the Sermon on the Mount. So this year, when they ask you, from which area is your study material, what will you say? Sermon on the Mount. Sermon on the Mount is principally Jesus' teaching on the mountain area of Jerusalem. Sermon on the Mount. It is not like, the sermon is not like this, our type of sermon where we preach it. It's made up of short teachings on different themes and issues. They call them Sermon on the Mount. And the theme is, you have heard that it was said. I will explain to you why they have used this. He moves further, the last paragraph, page 5, to thank the Reverend Talikon Amos Mfor, who has contributed. He coined the major theme of loyalty in 2016. It's Reverend Talikon Amos Mfor who coined they can call it a series, a 7-year series, loyalty. This is the 7th year. The 7th year after loyalty was created. So he calls it. So Reverend Talikon, he congratulates him, and there is a page somewhere where Reverend Talikon has written the editorial. The editorial is like the introduction. So he congratulates the Reverend Talikon, who introduced the bigger theme, loyalty. And under loyalty, we've had about 6 other themes, or 6 themes, and this year they are concluding a 7-year period of study with "You Have Heard." The logic is that all that you've heard about trust and loyalty, all that you've heard, this is the time now to put it at heart and to put it into practice. That's why they use the craft "You have heard." You have heard. So the acknowledgement is written by Reverend Neba Mwangu, who is the National Youth Secretary of the PCC. Now let's go to the editorial. Like I said, every book, most books have 2 things. Most books, you have the foreword and the preface. But here they prefer to use the editorial. They prefer to use the editorial. The foreword is usually, or the editorial is like an appetizer. Somebody who has read the book and has been entertained or has been informed, he wants to whet your appetite to get into the book. Then the preface is like a mini introduction to what the book is saying, broken down the structure of the book, the chapters, a summary of the structure, the chapter, the theme, and the style. That's what is the content of a preface. So when somebody asks you, what's the difference between a foreword and the foreword, which year they prefer to use the editorial here instead of foreword. So you can put editorial stroke foreword, 4 words, 4, not 4, not 4 like 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 like before, FORE. Forward, literally translated, will mean the first words. What is the first words that you will say about this book? 4 words. Okay, so we are now on the editorial, whose other name, in some other versions, they can say the 4 words. Reverend Talikon Amos Mfor began with a series known as Loyalty. And in the past 6 years, we have studied 1, loyalty, 1 Samuel 22 verse 14, 2, Onesimus, now useful. That was a come together symbol. Also, loyalty was in Bastos 2015. I think so. It should be 2015. In Bastos. Then Onesimus, now useful. No, loyalty was in Simeon. Yes. Loyalty was in Simeon. Yeah, 2017, yes, Simeon, yeah. The one in Bastos was the one on Exodus. You do what? It was the one in Exodus. The book you posted the book of Exodus in 2015. Yes. Okay. And what was it? Exodus. Okay. Then we have Onesimus. Loyalty was Simeon. Onesimus was in Symbol. You had young and serviceable. Where was that? Still in Bastos. For Diamond Jubilee. For the Diamond Jubilee. The act of service to God. That was, is it Oja? Then let us come back to God. Where was that? Etugebe. And then last year, trust in God only. I think so. Simeon, yeah. And after this sub-themes, under the bigger theme, loyalty, we are in the 7th year. You have heard that it was said. In his reflection, the Reverend Telecom says, the use of the PCC cannot continue to depend or blaming the forebears of our noble movement for the shortcomings of yesteryears. The youth of the PCC after Diamond are capable of challenging pitfalls in the system that pushes the young people far away from the center of power. It is by doing the things that Jesus Christ calls us to do daily that our presence and challenges are recognized. So he's saying that young people, after having studied 6 sub-themes under the major theme loyalty, stop blaming the older generation for your mishaps or the weaknesses of the movement. He is saying that stand up and challenge the system that pushes the youth to the fringes instead of leaving them at the center. And for him, he says, this cannot be done by force or by mere rudeness or stubbornness, but it can be done by believing and practicing all that you have heard so that you can become relevant. Amen. Amen. And that's the reason why join in the heavenly way of work and life as we study through the Sermon on the Mount. This is going to propel us into action. If we had been sleeping and doing nothing, the Gospel according to Matthew chapter 5 to 7, so the Sermon on the Mount 5 to 7. If somebody asks Sermon on the Mount is what? Chapters 5, 6, and 7. Is the Bible's strength to buttress our teaching and learning process this year. So, but I realized that reading all the first part of the book, I realized that there's a specific way in which they spell Matthew. Is that a type of CYF or it's an error? Those of you who went to Recom, do you go to Recom? Do you have Recom? You don't have. Okay. Do they explain these things to you there? Because well, this have you seen it empty? Then they put a full stop. Then HEW. Is that the style of spelling Matthew in the CYF? National error. That's good. And you know national errors are styles. You know you CYF like styles. So they are giving you a new style. Don't mind using GC, you will fail shamelessly, you know. So, the Gospel according to Matthew. So, there are 60, don't forget the theme. Also, loyalty. These publications were intentionally crafted to address the many-sided problems of the youth in the PCC. Now, when you read, I know often there's an English error we all make. We talk about the youths. No, that's not correct. The youth, because youth in itself is a collective noun. Whenever you use the word the youth, you are describing a group of people of the same age, young age. Now, when you are counting, you can add the plural. Many youths. But when you want to describe a bunch using a collective noun, you don't need to add an S there. This is very technical in grammar. All of us, maybe myself, I make the error too. Sometimes it's difficult in the mouth to say youth or the youth. It's like a singular. But when you know that the youth is a collective noun, that means many young people. You don't need to add an S there. It's like saying menses or men's. Men in itself is a plural of many man. So you can't say men's. Okay. So this is for grammar's sake. And I mean, CYF is the place where we learn everything. Okay. But I know when you say somewhere, people will think that you are wrong. You know, those who think that they know much, they'll think that you are wrong. Not that you are right. Okay. You are to make a clear choice of your stewardship to the PCC or to be with the world in running after the signs and wonders, occult groups and money-mongering scammers. You have heard that it was said. You have heard that it was said. Reminds us of the standard of life experienced in the membership of the kingdom. You are a diamond Christian youth group which should be matured enough to determine the faith and activities in the service of God in the church. But it seems you are still far behind and blindly following the decisions of the aged. Plan the future now in the contributions and participation in obedience to what God is teaching us in the gospel according to Matthew. Look at the way they have spelled it again. So surely the teeth of the printer has a problem. So everywhere. Okay. Yes, listen to him, listen. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Now, the spirit of the editorial. What is the spirit here? What is on the mind of the editorialist? The person who writes the editorial is called the editorialist. The person who writes the editorial is called the editorialist. Now, what is the spirit in the mind of the editorialist? He wants the youth to take a relevant responsibility in their participation in the church. The way he speaks, he says, don't follow what all others are doing. Don't follow what the old people are doing. Define yourself. Determine your course. And you can only do this if you practice what you have heard. He calls you are a diamond Christian youth group. Who are you? You are a diamond Christian youth group. We are a diamond people. We are a diamond Christian youth. And you all know the qualities of a diamond. One of the most precious stones, beautiful, but very hard to crack. He calls you are. And umptently, he wants you to define yourself. Take your stand. Don't follow what everybody is doing because they are doing. He has named the forebears. He has named the aged, not the age. The aged. What's the aged? Yes, you say age. No, it's not the age. Aged. He has named the aged as some of the people who mislead young people, and he has accused the new Christian movement. He calls them scammers. He calls them all scammers. You either remain as a diamond youth group in the PCC, or You go about running after signs and wonders, occult groups, money-mongering scammers. And ironically or sarcastically, he says, but it seems you are still far behind and blindly following the decisions of the agent. This is hard on you. So you are blind. You are still far behind. It seems, he uses the word it seems. It's not very certain whether you have really understood the meaning of loyalty, the meaning of trust, the meaning of returning to God, the meaning of being useful, the meaning of being serviceable. He says, it seems as if so. In the Editorialist, he has stated what is called the problematic. What is the problematic? What problem are we trying to solve? We are trying to solve a problem, the problem of youth groups that are only complaining and complaining, blaming the older generation about their mishaps. We are dealing with youth groups who are still running after new religious teachings, especially the one propounded by the ones who's called scammers. We are dealing with youth. We are dealing with youth groups that ought to be diamond, but they are still far behind and blindly following whatever thing the agents are telling them. That's the problem. Now it says, the big question we shall be working with will be the possibility of achieving what seems rather a Herculean task. Herculean come from the mythology Hercules. The word Herculean means an unbeatable task. What seems to be unbeatable or difficult, they use the word Herculean. He comes from one of the classics, Hercules. Hercules was a superman in history, when you read ancient history. So from Hercules came the word Herculean. When they say the task is Herculean, they are saying that it's a very difficult task. It's a tough thing to do. But Hercules the man, did tough things. And so from Hercules came the word Herculean. So it says, the big question we will be working with will be the possibility of achieving what seems rather a Herculean task. Remember, with God, one is the majority. Where is that seen in the Bible where one is majority? One with God is majority. Where is that found in the Bible? One with God is majority. Where is that found in the Bible? If you don't answer, then it means that we're going to dissolve you people. Okay, you don't. Your Bible knowledge is weak. Where is that found in the Bible? One with God is majority. Let me not delay you. Elijah and the 450 Baals. Elijah was alone, and he alone killed 450 prophets of Baal. One with God is what? Majority. So he says, even though the task of transforming the youth seems Herculean, but we must always remember that those who are with God are the majority. And he says, you are opportune to be there to complete the study of loyalty. Some of the members with whom you started lost their lives in the crisis. Others are out of the country for greener pastures. Others failed on the wayside. The task is not yet accomplished. Your task is to bring back these are fallen brothers and sisters to the mission of serving God. This is the reason you are today looking at the Sermon of the Mount. So that's the editorial. The editorial, in his reflection, he takes us back to what we have done so far. And even though we have done all these things, he still does not believe that we have reached the mark. He describes us as blindly following the teachings of the aged. He describes us as always complaining about our forebears. He describes us as following after occult groups and teachers of new doctrines whom he describes as scammers. But positively, he calls us, we are a diamond youth group. He believes that the task, what has been done is good, but it is not yet enough. So what is still to be done is Herculean. But we are not in despair, because being on the side of the Lord, He will give us strength to be able to complete this study, to complete the 7-year program series, and at the same time retrieve our friends who have fallen on the way, retrieve some of our friends who have given up their faith seeking for greener pastures, and celebrate the memory, or to be able to mourn the ones who have died on the way because of the crisis. This is the mind. So if you ask me, Pastor Masok, what is the spirit behind this study of you have heard? And my message will be simple, very simple. Complete what you have started. Show proof that you have understood what you have studied. Tidy up the loose end of the 7-year study gap. Tidy up and show proof that you are a diamond youth group. My friends, how do you feel when you are described as being far behind? How do you feel when you are described as blind, following blindly? It's like you have no sense of objectivity and you have no sense of your own. How do you feel? So the text, the editorialist, sets us up. He pushes us. He provokes us not to insult, not to condemn, but for us to come out and finish the task. Any question from the editorialist? I'm going to listen to your question. Reverend Charlie Kwahemospo is a lecturer at the PTS Kumba. He was once National Youth Secretary. He had once been Presbyterian Secretary. He had once been Regional Youth Secretary. And now he is chaplain. He's PTS Kumba. He used to be my senior in school. We lived in the same dormitory. More than me by 2 years. So he's a far senior pastor. Okay. Any question? Yes.
Yes, I have a question. When the Reverend Talibot was saying that the age we are too far behind and blindly following the because of age. And I think somewhere you contradictory because we have to show loyalty, and a loyalty will equally apply to take wisdom from the age. I think that today we are going to understand that we are blindly following the age which we are by obligation.
We are bound to be loyal to.
And be confused.
You should be confused. In my sermon on this theme loyalty, in the theme loyalty, I told a nice narrative. Listen very well. About being loyal. I told a nice story. The story between Jonathan and David. Jonathan, his father was the father is Saul. Saul wanted to kill David. Each time Jonathan had or overheard the father's plan, he leaked it to David, and David will escape the trap. Is Jonathan loyal or disloyal to his father? Is disloyal? No, you can't say that now. So should you be loyal for your father to kill another person? So I concluded the story by saying, loyalty means to obey God, and to obey God and to obey man, if only man is obedience to God. Killing is not an idea. Therefore, you can't charge Jonathan that he was not loyal to his father. So if I tell you now that, go and steal your father, go and steal money and bring for harvest, will you go and do it? Okay, next harvest, you must go and bring, you must break the store. You have to be loyal to the agent. Okay. Any other questions from the editorial? I think youth should follow what the older generation tells them, but youth should be selective what they take from the older generation. Go ahead. More questions from the editorialist, yeah. Okay. If we are finished with that, now let's go to the last part of this, the second to the last part. Let's go to the introduction to the Gospel of Matthew. To the Gospel according to Matthew. What's the difference between the Gospel of Matthew and the Gospel according to Matthew? What's the difference? Who can explain? What's the difference? The Gospel of Matthew and the Gospel according to Matthew. What's the difference? Not very sure. You are crashing your eye. Yes, brother, go ahead.
Yes, just to attempt. I think when you say the gospel of, it means that it actually is an event that he's writing about.
No.
That's the way I see it.
No, not correct. Yes.
The gospel according to Matthew. That means according to the way Matthew is presenting the gospel. That's according to what it is.
And the Gospel of Matthew.
The Gospel of Matthew, that means it's the Gospel of life, the Gospel of Jesus Christ, the Gospel of life.
No, the Gospel of Matthew. No, you are mixing up the second part. The first part is correct. The second part, I'm not very sure you are convinced what you want to say. He has gotten the first part. Second part, what's the difference between the Gospel according to Matthew and the Gospel of Matthew? And which one is correct? Yes, brother. Except of Matthew.
The Gospel of Matthew has to be Matthew 1:18, which is not correct. It is the Gospel of Matthew. Thank you.
Even though you didn't put it well, let me explain. You got the first part, but the two of you failed the second part. Yes, I hear people. Often people think that's English language. The Gospel of Matthew means that it's Matthew who wrote it. That Gospel that was written by Matthew, that's the meaning of Gospel of Matthew. That Gospel that Matthew wrote, that's what they mean. But I think the appropriate way to put it is the Gospel according to Matthew. So don't say the Gospel of Luke. Say the Gospel according to Matthew. Now, what's the meaning of synoptics? Have you heard about the synoptic gospel? What's the meaning of synoptics? From the Greek word synoptikos. What's the meaning of the word synoptics? Have you ever heard that the first three gospels are called synoptic gospel? Have you ever heard? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Why do they call it synoptics? Yeah, go ahead.
They summarize the life.
No. Yes. Synoptics. Yeah, something like that, but not very clear. Not put it very clearly, but something like that. Synoptic come from the Greek word synopticus, which means see together. Means what? See together. They are so similar as if they all were seen from the same lens. So they call it synoptics. So the first three gospels are called the synoptic gospels because they are similar, as if the three writers were seeing Jesus from the same lens. They saw together. Now, because the three gospels are similar, it is good to distinguish them by saying the gospel according to Matthew, which will simply mean Matthew's own version of the gospel. You can't say the gospel of Matthew. Matthew owns no gospel. It is Jesus who owns it. It is Jesus who is the gospel. So you can say the gospel of Jesus Christ. Gospel means good news, from the Greek word euangelion. Gospel means what? Good news. So when you hear gospel, it means what? Good news. From the Greek word euangelion. I studied Greek 28 years ago. I can still remember some of the vocabulary. From the Greek word euangelion. And from the same root word, you get evangelization. You have the word evangelization. Euangelistai. Okay. Thank you. So don't say, those of you who read lesson in the church, don't go and sit up there and say the gospel of Matthew. Our first lesson is taken from the gospel of Matthew, but the gospel according to Matthew, which means you are telling your audience that I'm aware that there are other versions of the gospel, but what I'm reading to you is the version of Matthew. You understand me? What I'm reading to you is the version of Matthew. And anybody who understands Bible will take you serious. When you see the Gospel of Matthew, and there are people there who understand, they will say you are a youngster. You are still far behind and blindly following what other youths are doing. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Yes. The gospel according to St. Matthew by Protestant tradition is wrong. But since we are in a universal system where you can always borrow from what you hear others say. You can always borrow. No, we Protestants don't have. In Protestant doctrine, every Christian is a saint. Therefore, no one has a distinct mark of a saint. By Roman Catholic doctrine, there's what they call sainthood, which is granted to specific people who have been beatified or blessed. Beatified comes from the Latin word beati, which means blessed. So, in Roman Catholic doctrine, you talk about saints, but we, in Protestant doctrine, we don't talk about saints because we believe that nobody has the right to sit and judge someone and declare them that they are saints. Like when Pope John Paul II died, on towards his burial, you could hear Sancto Subito, Sancto Subito, Sancto Subito. The entire population was singing Sancto Subito, which means make him a saint. But with Protestant doctrine, we don't believe that any of us have the capacity to look at somebody and judge them and make them holier than others. Only God has. So that's why we Protestants don't talk about saints. In Protestant language, anybody who has truly believed Christ is a saint. Not because they are higher than any other person, but for the fact that Christ has entered their lives. But if you say saint in a very uncritical environment, they will think that you are holier or you know big book. But in our presence, we'll just be laughing. That is unborrowed, back and proud, as you have been borrowed wrongly. You understand me? Okay, thank you.